Mayor Badaway is not here tonight. Surprisingly, they must have strapped him down in the hospital bed, or he's strapped in at home. But we would like to offer our sincerest wishes for a speedy recovery. He just had knee replacement surgery, so I'm sure that the doctor's prognosis is 6 to 8 weeks, but he'll probably be back next week because I'm sure he counts a day as a week, and you know how quickly he wants to get back to work. So with that being said, welcome to tonight's council meeting. We will be following two agendas tonight. The first agenda is the committee of the whole, followed secondly by the regular council meeting. And to start tonight's meeting, we'll have prayer by Councillor Steele, followed by the national anthem by Mr. Joel Longfellow.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Heavenly Father, source of all truth and wisdom, who knows and loves the whole creation, watch over our community, that truth may prevail over distortion, wisdom triumph over recklessness, and the concerns of every person be heard. Amen.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
What's the mayor usually say, Joel? Well done as always?
Thank you, Mr. Tex. My pleasure as always.
Thanks, Joel. Madam Clerk, is there any addendum items?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. None this evening.
Thank you. Next, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Steele. All in favor? That'll be carried. Any disclosures of interest? Other than me? I have a conflict on item number 2, pecuniary interest, as it deals with the company that I represent in real estate. And now we'll ask for determination of committee items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. 2 for your conflict and 4. Thank you.
Councillor Desmarais? No? Sorry. Councillor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Item number 11.
Councillor Steele? You want no? Looking for anything else? 1. We'll pull item 1.
Pull item 1?
Yeah.
I'll pull item 1.
Any other items? Ron? Frank? Nothing? You good? Okay. Thank you. We'll then ask for approval of the committee items not requiring separate discussion and look for a mover and a seconder on those. Councillor Butters? Councillor Kenny? All in favor? Let it be carried. Tonight there is no presentations, and there's one delegation going to speak to the item number 1. Mr. Pinelli is here. Yes, he is. So we'll have Mr. Pinelli when we get to item number 1. This will be a quick meeting. There's no mayor's report as the mayor's not here. And I believe everybody got regional councilor's regrets. He is ill, so he won't be with us this evening, which gets us all the ways down to councilor's items, new business. Councilor Danch.
I don't want to bug my fellow councilor here, but spring is in the air. The snow is melting, and you look around and you see garbage everywhere. The city spends a lot of money putting garbage cans out there with plastic bags inside them, and all you got to do is bend over and put it in a container, and somebody will take it away. I'm an avid person about keeping things clean and neat and tidy, and I just asked if maybe the community could all get together, and as you're walking around now, as things get better, and hopefully Mr. Weatherman doesn't do what he's thinking tomorrow, but if you maybe pick up that little bit of garbage that's kicking around, the odd pop can and recycle boxes that have been kicked all over, it'd be really nice to see our community get cleaned up a little bit earlier and kind of get the jump on spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Danch. Anyone else? No other items? I had one quick thing. We were over at the new Valley Health and Wellness Center on Saturday and walked on the track my wife made me walk for 2 miles around the track, which is 16 laps, and it was really nice because there was a kids hockey game going on, so I got to watch the game as we were going around. Fantastic track to walk on. It is something else. The rubberized surface, it's nice and cushioned. You feel great walking. I did see one of our staff members walking around cleaning up, sweeping up, and all he had on was a pair of sweatpants and just a shirt that didn't identify him. And I just wondered, do we have uniforms for staff members over there so the public can identify who staff is if they have any questions? Ron?
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We hand out jackets, and the staff at the arena do have city-issued wear that they are provided. So I'll make a note to talk to Paul tomorrow about it. Sure that we are doing that.
Okay. I just know that with so many new people going into the center, just to identify who's staff and who isn't, and if they needed any direction on where to go, they would know who to speak to. That's the only thing that stuck out. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Anything else? Nothing else? Any staff responses? Prior inquiries or anything like that? Any new business from staff? Nothing? Sale? No? We're good? We'll look for an adoption of the minutes of the 6th meeting regular of Committee of the Whole from February the 11th, 2013. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Doucette. Councillor Danch. All in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Consideration of items requiring separate discussion. Item 1, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Item 1 is Department of Planning and Development Report number 2013-7, subject request from Joe Pinelli, Franklin Avenue proposed development. The request for Mr. Pinelli to waive development charges be declined. The request for Mr. Pinelli to cost share be declined. The request for Mr. Pinelli to provide the required studies at a later date be declined. That Mr. Pinelli be advised that no further requests or delegations pertaining to the development along Franklin Avenue will be entertained aside from his attendance at the statutory public meeting and/or the future meetings when the proposed rezoning application is on the agenda for consideration.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Bodnar. Questions or comments? Yeah. Seeing none. Councillor Steele.
I know Mr. Pinelli is in attendance tonight. I assume by what we have here is he would like to speak to this.
Yeah. Mr. Pinelli, would you like to come up to the podium and give your presentation? Just push the push everybody. Thanks, Steve.
The reason I'm before you this evening was we had a meeting with the mayor's office about 3 weeks ago, and one of the, or two of the items that he pointed out to us was that on another subdivision ongoing in the city, there was as the mayor put it to me and our associates, tools in place for the city to legally consider waiving the impost fees in residential areas, which he probably could address better than I ever can, because I don't know the do's and don'ts of it all. The one thing that he mentioned to me was that he felt fairly certain that this could be looked at by council due to the fact that apparently in industrial zoning, the impost fees were waived. And the fact that our land has sewer and water fronting the highway and also on the east end may qualify it somehow, I don't know how, under these guidelines or tools that the mayor referred to. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm before you here this evening. So without having any other information other than that, all I can ask is that this council or committee review that and let us know. The other, that's the first item. The other item was we have made an official zoning application, paid the fees, and have greatly simplified our development so that all the studies that are required, such as noise, servicing, and I think there was one other. When we spoke with the mayor's office, he did mention that there is another subdivision which council apparently approves in principle before we go out to do the costly studies. Now, I don't know, again, how that works or how that sits with this council, but I'm reluctant to go ahead and sanction quite a few studies without some indication as to whether we're headed in that direction or if it's acceptable to the council, the development that is. And the only other item that I'll leave you with is that I understand from planning, if these studies are not done, then we don't get a planning meeting. So we're kind of stuck in a catch-22 here. And I was hoping this council could assist us in that manner. And last but not least, the other item that we looked at was access to the east end of this development, which was off an existing road. And I believe planning staff wrote us a few years ago and said that we would require a zoning amendment, if I'm not mistaken, to gain access to lot 9. And that would be a residential house, single family home. And maybe in the fray of things, the noise studies and the servicing studies and everything else may have pertained to the larger development as a whole, but not necessarily to a single family home. So I guess we can't move forward unless some of these items are addressed. So I'm here before you to address those 3 items, actually 4 items. And hopefully get some guidance from this council. And that's basically it. And I'm sorry to see that Vance is not feeling well. We did have an hour discussion, and he mentioned some of the There are some regional rules and guidelines to go by where council of the day can look at these impost fees. What they are, I never got into it with them, so I don't know. And that's basically all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Pinelli.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? Just 1 second. Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In our report tonight, Mr. Pinelli, it tells us that from May 2010 to February the 11th, 2013, planning staff have received 249 emails from you directly proposing a variety of concepts and servicing plans along Franklin. However, as of February the 11th, staff had requested from you further clarification about this rezoning application being revised and exactly what the cost sharing that you're talking about is supposed to be, and to date you have not responded to staff. I wonder if you could tell me anything about that. And then
Which date? February?
it says on February the 11th, 2013, staff requested further clarification, confirmation from Mr. Pinelli regarding the rezoning application being revised and exactly what cost sharing you wanted. You don't know, you've got to give us a price, and Mr. Pinelli has not responded.
Our last correspondence, I believe we did respond to that. And,
I'm just going by the report.
I'll have to check, because
Okay.
I wanted to bring our project manager, or project coordinator with us, but he was unable to attend tonight. I believe the last letter we sent was January 28th.
No, I'm just going by the staff report that we have in front of us. And then also mentioned in the staff report, and you actually mentioned it tonight too, about you asked on February the 11th to have engineering review. And engineering did review your request before and said that they did not support that road allowance or any portion thereof because of the north end trunk storm sewer. So I'm going to ask Mr. Hansen if he could please respond to that. And then Mr. Pinelli, Dan would know more than anybody, since he's received 249 emails from you in regards to what the mayor was talking to you about, because I certainly don't know anything about that either. So first of all, through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Hansen. Mr. Hansen, if you could explain the engineering concepts that you had spoke to before, and then after Ron answers that, if I could ask. Okay, thanks.
You, Deputy Mayor, Councilor Kenny. Our policy at the city has been quite clear for quite a number of years. Development on an unopened, unapproved road allowance requires any developer coming in has to bring the existing road allowance up to an urban standard. That's always been our policy. There's no way that the council and the city has supported in the past any upfronting of cost to any developers or a cost sharing mechanism for that in that respect. So our review has indicated that any development that would access Franklin Avenue should be developed to a full urban standard, and all the costs should be incurred by the developer.
Councillor Kenny?
Thank you. That answers that question. Mr. Pinelli, I hope you understand that you just said about that. And Dan, do you know anything about what the mayor was talking about in regards to these impost fees that there's and tools that the region will provide in us for him? Thanks.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Kenny, I'm not aware of what the mayor is referring to. And my report is quite clear that the land needs to be within a community improvement project area to be exempt from development charges like we have for the Old Humberston Main Street CIP, for the East Waterfront CIP, and for the Downtown CIP. This land is not within a CIP area. The other lands that we do exempt for are for employment-related purposes, and again, that is a waiver that Council has agreed through a community improvement plan. Council has not approved any plan for this particular area.
That's all. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bonner?
Thank you very much. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Dan, I guess. Mr. Pinelli's been here a number of different times, and there's done it. Would we, if another developer was standing in that spot, would we be treating them any differently than Mr. Pinelli?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councilor Bonner, absolutely. And before the previous owner went through the same process, and staff's comments as reflected by Mr. Hanson required the exact same thing. And the owner, I believe, was Mr. Pallone in the 90s and whatever he was proposing then. It's been consistent. It's a policy of the city to require that full urban standard. So if any developer came forward, we would be requesting the same amount of work and upgrade.
Thank you. Any, Councilor Steele? Thank you, Acting Mayor. Through you to Mr. Aquilina. Dan, with regards to the west end of Franklin Avenue, where it's the unopened road allowance to Highway 58, is the whole issue here that Mr. Pinelli just doesn't want to finish it between the west end and connect it to 58 because the ministry actually has stipulations in there that he may have to put in traffic signals with a controlled intersection. Is this just a piecemeal of a development where he wants to add to the sewer and water and stormwater system and then add again and again and again, which, you know, you have way too many connections, which will put the taxpayer in peril in the future when you got to go in and fix these things? Isn't the more prudent way is that you open this road allowance to Highway 58, you put in the proper intersections at both ends, you put in the proper street, you put in the proper water, the proper sewer, the proper storm sewer, so that development can be serviced properly and that it's not a burden to the city? Isn't that really what we're talking about here?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councilor Steele, absolutely, Councilor Steele. That's what goes back to Mr. Hanson's comments. The city's position has always been to actually bring Franklin Avenue right to West Side Road. That would then require the services along Franklin Avenue and the road to be upgraded to full urban standard with connections from Franklin Avenue. Mr. Pinelli's latest proposal, as you can see, has development and servicing going towards the eastern edge in the southeasterly direction. Nothing along Franklin Avenue. And as Mr. Hanson mentioned, it's important to note as well, the zoning bylaw currently says that no development is permitted along an unimproved road. That's been our position from day one with Mr. Pinelli. And we've always required that land be upgraded, the road be upgraded to full urban standard.
Thanks, Dan. So therefore, Acting Mayor, I'll be supporting staff's recommendation. I will not support a piecemeal development. I mean, this has to be done properly. We've had other developers here in the last few years that have gone through studies after study. I look at Lester Schultz Limited with the west end of Clarence Street, opening that up. I mean, that's taken years to do because he's following the proper procedures. He's also had to deal with the Township of Wainfleet to help upgrade Cement Plant Road. So now we're going to bonus somebody on this side of it because he doesn't want to do it the proper way. Yet you've got a developer on the other end that's gone through all the hoops to get a development going. I just don't think it's fair to those developers that we deal with on a constant basis that, you know, they don't have to stand here asking for freebies from the taxpayer for forward. So I will be supporting staff's recommendation here.
Thank you, Councilor Steele. Any other questions or comments? Nothing? Dan, anything further? Mr. Pinelli?
I'll take one more shot at this. I don't think we're referring, with all due respect, to the same thing. I mean, Franklin Avenue, we're not trying to piecemeal anything together. This is the front of Highway 58. There's 3 lots. I even brought a sketch here for every one of you to look at. All the servicing, as you can see, comes right off of the intersection between Highway 58 and the unopened Franklin. There's no entrances off of the unopened Franklin. This is coming all off of Highway 58. So I'm not sure we're all referring to the same thing here. I don't think we are. And this has been the problem all along. Our development, which we applied for, and we called Proposal A, that was this is the one that we went to see the mayor's office about to get some guidance, and we do this routinely. We then, after meeting with him and the officer, we then scaled this down. The servicing that staff is referring to is if you're developing the entire property and requires a full service, such as water, sewer, storm sewer. Mr. Hanson referred to storm sewer. Our development is right across the front. These lots already exist. The highway's already there. I'm not sure what you're referring to. We're obviously not referring to the same things. I think the second proposal, which is proposal B as we call it, and again, I brought a copy for everyone to see here, requires no entrances from Franklin Road other than the existing Franklin Road and the existing pavement that's there. You only need 16 feet for a driveway. We don't need more than that. And there's 24 feet of road there. The service, such as water and sewer, is already at the end of Franklin. You just have to bring it in for one house. We're not building the Eiffel Tower here. This is a very simple proposal. For staff to keep assuming that I've got to build an entire road to build one house at the end of Franklin and make it also part of a phase 2 development, it would be rather far-fetched. So I urge you to look at what we are really proposing, which is 3 houses across the front. Sorry, 2 semis and 1 house. We've already been to the Ministry of Transportation. They're fine with the semis. We've got people that want to buy them, and 1 single-family home. Certainly that's not a big development and requires noise studies and servicing studies. You know, we're not on the same scale as Lester Schultz's development. This is a very minor development. So that's why I'm here before you. The CP1 area that, and you know, forgive me because I forgot what that really means, but that's, I think, something that
The CIP you're talking about?
CIP. The mayor did mention this to me at the time of our meeting, and he said something about the council can't create CIP areas, not create them, I'm not sure, but he did mention that there would be assistance in that manner available, possibly.
I think
So that's why I'm before you.
In CIP areas,
You know, when
it is available.
when we bought this land in 2010, in Ferris Fair here, there's 9 lots. With the new impost fees, that added $120,000 to any costs above and beyond what we had originally anticipated. So, I mean, if any business, and somebody who's our business people, somebody comes in and just slaps down a $120 expense on you, you're obviously going to look at it and say, hey, can I do this or can't I? And it's impossible to do. That's why I've been before you a number of times. Because in the last 30 years, you haven't seen me too many times before you. So have a look at our proposal. If you really feel that it's so far-fetched that we're piecemealing it, I don't think that's correct. Thank you for your,
Thank you, Mr. Pinelli.
counsel.
Seeing no further questions or comments, Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Dan, through you. Mr. Pinelli is telling us that the development he's talking about, I guess not as much as the one that's here before us, I think, are 3 lots facing Highway 58, is that, or West Side Road. Now, he talks about a paved portion of road, which is unopened road allowance. It's an unopened road allowance, which is Franklin, that goes to West Side Road, but is not opened. The police are sitting there often to catch speeders, but and he's telling us right now that he's been granted permission from the ministry to open up 3 new driveways onto West Side Road, Highway 58. We should have to get permission from the Ministry of Transportation. Is this different than what's before us in regards to servicing? Because I know what Ron's telling me about that north end trunk, I understand that, but is that different than the request to open that whole Franklin?
Mr. Aquilino?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Kenny. If you look at page 20, I believe the CEO is flipping back and forth to that. You can see on that there are 3 proposed buildings, 2 of them being a semi, 1 being a commercial 1-story and 1 being a single family. To the east of that, you see a 23-unit apartment. Further to the east, you see a 23-unit apartment, and then you see a single-family home.
Right.
That was submitted with his application early January. There have been 2 other revisions, and the most latest revision is page 22. And on there, you'll again see now you'll see 3 dwellings fronting onto West Side Road. You will now see a 17-unit apartment building, and further east, you will see a single-family home. The apartment building and the single-family home front onto Franklin Avenue.
Correct.
And that is why we are still requiring all of the studies and the full servicing of Franklin Avenue.
Correct. I just wanted you to clarify that one more time, because sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No,
I
that's
just wanted you to clarify that one more time, because Mr. Pinelli's standing here trying to tell us that it's just those 3 lots. But indeed, he has submitted a plan to us that shows development east of those 3 lots. Thank you. That's all I needed to clarification on.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah. Any questions? We're good? Calling the question. All in favor? The report? Against? It'll be carried unanimously. Thank you. I'll turn the chair over now to Councillor Desmarais for my conflict.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. All right, and this is the conflict. Erase this. Okay. Councillor Kenny, item number 2.
Thank you very much, Acting Deputy Mayor. Deputy, yeah. The recommendation is that council enters into an agreement of purchase of sale with 1844835 Ontario Inc. for the sale of parts 1 and 2, Plan 59R-14802 for the purchase price of $275,000 plus HST, that the city clerk prepares the necessary bylaw for council's approval, and 3, that the mayor and clerk and city solicitor be authorized to sign and execute any and all documents respecting the sale of these lands.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Do I have someone seconding this? Councillor Dance?
Okay. Just a question to our planner, through you to the planner. This property that we're talking about is the sale of the former West Side Arena, and that we have had an agreement of purchase. And through the planner, Mr. Aquilina, very happy that we've been able to sell the land and we have someone interested in developing that. Do we have any idea from the purchaser what that development may or may not be?
Through you, acting Deputy Mayor. To Councillor Kenny, unfortunately, publicly I cannot release any of the information. I did meet with the prospective owner of the property. He has some plans, but publicly I can't share those, but I think it would be something that this council would support and the city of Port Colborne would support.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Any will require rezoning? That is a question. Will it require rezoning?
It may. It may. At this point, I don't have anything before me, but it may require rezoning in which the neighborhood and the signage would be posted and ultimately would be back before council for consideration. But potentially because right now it is zoned public and park, so it's quite limited on the uses of the property. So any deviation from the public and park zone would require rezoning. But as council is aware, it's pretty limited on the permitted uses on the property.
Thank you, Mr. Aquilina. All right, does anyone else have anything to say? No? All right. Your pleasure. All in favor? Against? No, that's carried. And thank you so much, Deputy Mayor Elliott.
You gotta make sure this only happens once, right? Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Demeray. Item 4, Councillor Kenny.
Thank you once again, Deputy Mayor. That the council set the 2013 water and wastewater rates as follows. Water usage rate at $1.071 per cubic meter. Water service fixed charge at $276.09 annual fixed rate. Wastewater usage 1.15 per cubic meter, and wastewater service fixed charge at $314.69 annual fixed rate. That the 2013 water and wastewater budgets as presented be approved, that the appropriate water and wastewater rate bylaws are presented to council for approval, and that the 2012 wastewater surplus be transferred to the appropriate reserves as outlined in this report.
Seconder to that? Councillor Demeray. Questions or comments? Councillor Bodnar.
I have a couple too.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I was speaking to someone in the public, and I'd just like to know if this time if they would like to speak. The opportunity is now. They may or may not want to, but I would bring that forward.
Sorry, Councillor Bonner. Can you repeat that?
I was speaking to a member of the public that's here tonight, and they were unsure whether they wanted to speak. I know it'll probably take a leave of council, but I'm not sure if they do or not. If you would ask if anybody would like to speak, if they do, we'll deal with that.
Yes, it's a public meeting. We'll come right back to that. Be moved it. I'll give her a chance to speak first, and then we'll come back and ask for leave if anybody would like to make comments. Is that okay?
Deputy Mayor, just a quick explanation. We advertised tonight, in accordance with the Act, that this is a public meeting, but it's still council. And generally what would happen is that you would still ask for leave for somebody to speak to this. If they were specifically identified, if they had called in or had asked for an appointment, the clerk would put her on. At this point in time, you'd still ask for leave. Generally, that occurs when you're doing water, wastewater, and we've advertised it specifically for the water and wastewater consideration of the budget this evening.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have no problem having anybody that's in the public speak first, and then I'll ask my questions. I'll let them speak first and raise their concerns, and then I'll speak to the issue. Thank you.
Yes. Before we get to that part of the, I'll just ask if the Treasurer or Director of Community and Corporate Services, Mr. Sinnes, would like to speak to this and talk about his report, and then we'll open it up afterwards.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll give a quick highlight of the water and wastewater budget. As was presented in the recommendation, the water usage rate is actually going down in 2013 for the second year in a row. Last year's rate was $1.95, and this year it's gone down to $1.71, and that's a decrease of about 2.2%. On an average home, that is a decrease of about $6.60 on an average user that uses about 3/4 of cubic meters per day. On the service charge, some of our fixed costs are going up. So the fixed charges are going up from $259 to about $276, so an increase of about $16. Combined for the water, that's about a 1.8% increase overall, or about $10 for the year. On the wastewater side, the usage rate is going up from about $1.13 to $1.15 per cubic meter, which is about an increase of about $5 to the average homeowner, or 1.6% increase. Again, the fixed service charge is fixed costs that are going up, both from the region and some of the city costs. And that's going up from about $298 to about $314. And that's an increase of about $16 over the year. And again, combined, the wastewater combined increase is about 3.47% increase, or about $21. So overall, we're looking at a 2.67% increase to the average homeowner, which is about $31 over the whole year. Again, so a couple of the reasons that the water usage rate is going down for the second year in a row is due to the fact that our unbilled revenues are being reduced. So we are finding leaks and so on, so we're not having to pay for that. Therefore, our water sales actually, our cubic meters that we're actually selling, increases because of that. And with that said, then what happens is the rate, we're able to actually reduce the rate in order to gain the revenue that we require for the budget. On the wastewater side of it, again, what happens there is, as you know from previous budgets, our wastewater or infiltration has also been reduced through the CSO program that the engineering department's going through. So we are seeing some reductions there. Unfortunately, what happens though is that the fixed costs that we do are charged for wastewater being treated at the regional level is on a 3-year average. So we're still at the high end of our 3-year average, and therefore the costs that we're seeing from the region for wastewater treatment is still on the high side. So we still have some high figures there. The good news is that it is coming down. So we would hope that if that trend continues, that within the next couple of years, that we'll hopefully see that level out, similar to what the water flows have leveled out right now. The other thing with the water flows, what's happened is we anticipated in our 10-year plan that the water flows would, or usage would go down to about 2.6 million cubic meters. It's stayed steady for the last 3 years at about 2.9. So we didn't see that reduction that we were anticipating, because 5 years ago, the way it looked on a graph, it looked like we were going to reach about a 2.6 million cubic flows, but it's leveled out at 2.9, which means that's what the community is actually using in flows. So once we get those stabilized, it helps us stabilize the rates that we're able to bring forward. So where you're seeing, other municipalities are seeing 4 or 5% increases, we're able to bring in an increase of about 2.6%, and actually for the last 2 years see our water rate actually being reduced. Yes, our costs still go up. Our capital costs, our costs that we pay the region, do go up, so we do pass those on, and also some of our own internal costs do continue to go up, cost of living, and so we're covering that in this budget.
Thank you, Peter. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Doucette.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Peter. Peter, I guess I'm surprised it didn't go up a little more, because we talk about all the leaks that we've repaired and everything. They come at a cost. And I guess it would be fair to say, I don't know whether staff have the number of what we paid in the last few years, but I would think it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to the point we're at now. And also, I'm sure the public's heard, but just as a reminder, that new water regulations have come in that require us to, you know, certainly, we've hired people due to those regulations, so that's a direct cost to the water. So I don't know whether you want to comment on any of that, but all that stuff combined, the increase is actually fairly low.
Thank you, Councilor Bonner. Mr. Sinnes?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you're correct, Councilor Bonner. Like we have increased staffing, both in water and sewer. We're able to the cost of that we're able to put on both budgets, so we spread out the cost there. The fact that we have increased our costs from a staffing perspective in order to meet all the regulations and all that. The good part about it is that our water flows over the last couple of years, where we've seen our staff increases, we've seen the water flows slowly coming down. Our unbilled revenue is less, so which means we're actually billing more consumption, and with the increase in the or the reduction or the leveling off of the flows and the increase of our unbilled revenue and our sales, increase of our sales, we're able to absorb those costs within the rate structure.
Thank you, Peter. Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm looking at this, and I agree with what Councilor Bodner just mentioned. It's 2.67. My only concern with this, and I don't know if anyone can even answer it, is the fact that the fixed costs are going up faster than inflation. Both fixed costs. So you're talking about a 6.42% increase, a 5.40% increase. And I know when I do my budget at home, I've got to try to stay within a certain level. And although one piece goes down, if you're going to increase everything else, then that doesn't help. So this 6.42, I'd like to see at 2%, which is about what inflation is. It's a little higher than inflation. And 2.98, which is 5.40, should be down as well. I have an idea why it's there, but I'd like someone to explain that to me, because I'm at the point where I'm looking at not voting for anything that is above the 2% level. We have to start reining in some of our costs, and I don't see that as happening here. Although the overall is 2.67, but that's because of the decrease of 2.21. We should be passing that on, not absorbing it in this way, after all I'm concerned.
Thank you, Councilor Doucette. Mr. Sinnes?
Hey, Mr. Deputy Mayor. If you look at reducing the fixed rate, the fixed cost, what's going to happen is your consumption rate is going to go up even higher. So your consumption rate is going to go high. The costs have to be the revenue generation has to cover the overall cost, both of what we're paying to the region for purchases, and also on the sewer side for what we're paying for infiltration and for treatment. The fact that the region is going more to a fixed cost component, they're going to, right now it's 25%. They're looking at over the last few years, they're talking about going 50%, going on a fixed cost component. When we look at our fixed costs include debentures, includes capital works for the for construction, for new mains and so on. It also includes any of the costs that we don't recoup through revenue generation, because it's either going through broken pipes or infiltration and that type of thing. So that's the only thing that is going on the capital component. And if you're going to look at what happens with the fixed costs, it does create more of a stable environment for the water and the wastewater budgets and the revenues. Because if you don't, then what you're going to have what you'll find is, as we see in other municipalities, running large deficits because they're not able to recoup their fixed costs. And when you really look at, the unfortunate part is when you look at the majority of the costs, they are all fixed. And when we go to a metering program, you're basing it on water flows. And if we don't meet those water flows and recoup those revenues, we're not then covering our fixed costs. So that's why you see sort of the fixed costs. And you know, when you look at, you know, I was able, actually there's only about 3 municipalities that have passed their water sewer rates right now. But you know, I was able to get Fort Erie's and Argonne Lakes, and Fort Erie's is their fixed costs are for water $291 compared to our $276, and their wastewater is $490 compared to our $315. Their usage rate for water is $1.09, ours is $1.07, and their wastewater is $1.20, and ours is $1.15. So you know, we don't have other ones because a lot of them haven't passed their budgets yet. But the region has started now charging, because they're able they were able to get their budget done in December. They wanted to move towards the fact that they're charging lower tier municipalities as of January 1st, where previously it was March 1st. So what's going to happen with some of these other municipalities that don't have the rates in place, they're going to be incurring additional costs and not going to be able to recoup those. So, and that's why we're bringing forward our budget actually a lot sooner this year than what we've had in previous years, in order to make sure that we do cover the increase in costs that we're actually incurring. But when I look at, you know, some of the other municipalities and the increases that they're looking at, and I look at our overall increase, I think when you look at there's a fixed cost, but the consumer does have control over some of their usage cost, and overall the usage rate is going down, and yes, there's a fixed component to the increase.
Councillor Doucette.
Thank you very much, sir. It still doesn't answer the question, and it's going up faster than inflation. That's the answer I want. Why is it going up faster than inflation? If it's going up faster than inflation, then what are we doing wrong, and shouldn't we shouldn't we be reining it into inflation rates? That's what I want. That's the answer I want. I understand why the fixed rate, and I understand we need the fixed rate. What I don't understand is the increase that is going up so high, and why are we not trying to rein it in?
Mr. Sinnes?
Well, when we do look at our overall costs, you know, unless you're going to cut services and cut some parts of the services to reduce the cost, then that's the only way we're going to reduce that amount. As you know, our capital, we do have, we know that our capital actually isn't as high as it should be as to what we're putting into the system. It should be higher. So what we're trying to do is slowly move ourselves to that point in time where we're not going to be, and I'll be honest with you, because our fixed component is in a good position right now, at least I believe it is, and I think Ron agrees, is that when in the future, when the region starts putting more onto the fixed component, and if municipalities have not brought themselves up to the point where 50%, a minimum 50% of the water costs from the region treatment of water is on our fixed costs, then there's going to be a huge increase in some of these other municipalities, because they're not going to be where we are today. And it's no different on the wastewater side. The wastewater is 100% fixed cost to the municipality from the region for treatment, and we have to make sure that we're recouping that under our fixed costs. And so, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're moving towards making sure that we're going to be sustainable on our fixed costs, so that we don't have huge increases in the future, because that's what will happen in the future, and that's what you'll probably see in some other municipalities that haven't moved towards having the fixed cost component at a higher level. and we're slowly moving there. Like I think the amounts that we're putting on, $16 over the year, over 12-month period, it's just over $1. And I think for that purpose, to make sure that we're going to be sustainable and we're not going to see large increases in the future, I think it's prudent that we're on this gradual increase to get there.
Thanks, Peter. Be good for Mr. CEO.
Your Worship, part of the problem is it would go up by inflation if it was static. It's not static. You replace old pipes that are 70 years old or 50 years old with new ones. The depreciation amount is at today's dollars and not 70-year-old. So it's not the fixed cost, if you see on the screen is on the page. There are very few things that are at fixed costs. One of them is the amortization of capital. That in itself is not static. It moves significantly. So it's going to be higher than 2% just because you put new pipes in the ground. The greater value. The same as with the regional water charge. They're increasing, as the treasurer said, they're increasing at a greater rate than inflation. If it was static, it would be inflation. And this changeover is the move and the change in the legal requirements under the new legislation that says you must fund it. You must finance it. You have no choice. And as these change, you have no choice but to accept these. You can move it over on the water rate, and the treasurer has pulled together this schedule that shows what's on the consumption costs, and that's the budget for the city, as well as what the fixed costs are, and that's the budget for the city. And they show up. There are 6,405 accounts. $1,768,000 divided by that comes up to $276. The other one is the gallonage. The gallonage right now is 22.3 million, and that goes into the cost. It comes up with $1.07. And there's no other way to cook that. You can move things back and forth. The bottom line is, it's a $4 million budget. It is not static. It is ever increasing. I wish it was static, but it's not. And that's part of the explanation of why it's more than not. That's what it is.
Thanks, Bob.
Sorry for the long
notes. Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple questions in regards to the report. You know what I'm like when it comes to water, sewer, and I know because I sit on that committee along with Councillor Steele. However, I always think of the water and sewer like a utility. I think that's why we went that way. We took it off our taxes and we put it as a separate entity so we could show everybody. If I use more electricity than Councillor Desmarais, I pay. It's reflected in my hydro bill. If I use more heat than her, it's reflected in my heating bill, my gas bill. So my question, I guess, is why would not we have a fixed water rate that reflects only the cost of living and a higher user rate? Can we make up, and I know we've hired staff, we've had to hire staff because we were mandated by the province to hire a water technician because we needed that on our staff, which we didn't have. And I know that we have to raise these funds so we can pay the region. Though one time we, what was in 2011, we were underpaid by $384,000, and we had our surplus which paid for that. Is it possible for us to set a rate though that it's user pay? Are we able to set a rate so that if I use more, I pay more? I know the fixed rate, everybody goes, well, the fixed rate has to come out because a pipe in front of my house is the same as a pipe in front of her house. So the pipe has to be replaced. I think on Erie Street on the weekend, I think our staff are out there all night. They replaced three water mains that broke on Erie and Charles. And I had calls from constituents because they had the water off a lot longer than they thought, but as they fixed one, another one broke. So I understand those fixed costs, but what I want to know kind of, is it possible? Because I see in this report that we have a surplus for 2012 of the wastewater system, the wastewater, of 110,000. Now we had a small deficit of 5,000 in the water part, but and you're recommending that the surpluses be set aside in case we ever get to this regional averaging again and hold the money. And I certainly understand putting money away in case that happens again, because it sure saved us the last time. But is it possible, I guess I'll ask you and Ron, is it possible to go to a more user pay system than this system and still get the funds we need to keep our system, I guess, going?
Thanks, Councillor
It's a
Kenny.
long question, but
You got there.
thanks.
Mr. Sinez.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'll answer the question, and probably Mr. Hanson may add to it. Basically, the short answer is no. And unfortunately, because of the fact that the costs, especially the costs from the region, are fixed. We have to cover that cost. What will happen is, if you really increase the usage rate, what will end up happening is we'll be looking at deficits in the future. And if we run into deficits, and the reason I say we run into deficits is because it's all then dependent on flows, and it depends on the weather. If we have a rainy season versus a dry season, and we don't know what that is, so you know you're sort of guessing at what may happen. And the fact that that you know the region uses 3-year averaging in order to come up with a fixed cost, whether or not you know the season is dry or wet, we're going to have to pay those costs to the region. And if we don't bring in enough revenue to cover those costs, then that's where we'll see ourselves in a deficit. We saw ourselves in a deficit in waste management in 2011 when they did the reconciliation. This year, 2012, we're actually lucky that the fact is that because it was a dry year, our treatment was lower than what they were charging us, so we actually overpaid versus the year before, but we only overpaid by $42,000, which isn't a lot. So we were sort of right there. But it could have easily, if we had a wet season, we could have been $300,000 again as a deficit. So if we're not covering up those fixed costs that we know that we have, then we're just opening ourselves up for problems in the future, the next year, possibly. And the fact that we were able to have a bit of a surplus in 2012 to put away, because guaranteed that deficit again, or that underpayment to the region, will happen again. It's just year to year, and you know, you hope that as municipalities are finding leaks and so on, that everybody starts to get a better system and they can get better estimates, and the cost will start to level itself out. We're hoping, we're seeing ours starting to drop off, but again, it takes 3 years before you see those savings come forward to us. So you know, we have to make sure that our system is fully sustainable, and we're not going to run into those deficits. I'm not sure if Mr. Hanson has anything else to add.
Mr. Hanson?
You, Deputy Mayor. Just to add to what Peter said, I think the technique that's being used here as we move towards a 50-50 split on the water, it's really a rate stabilization technique. If we went more to the consumption side, which is the way a lot of municipalities operate, and we were at a lower percentage a few years back, you can fluctuate the rates so that you have more control over it. So the less fixed, the more you can control it, the less water use. But the danger in that, as Peter said, is that with the variables in weather and breaks and a lot of other things, the rate really would fluctuate. It would be fairly low one year, and then depending on what would happen, you'd be looking at 10 or 15% double-digit increases to try to make up, because in the end, the fixed part of the entire budget has to be made up in the end. So you would be looking at fluctuations in rate. What this does, if you get to 50-50 on the rate fixed component, you can really stabilize the rate. So you still have, at 50%, you still have the opportunity in your own usage to control that 50% of your bill, in that if you cut the cost down, you can lower that portion of your bill. You have less control, but you have some control on it. So that's always there. If it goes higher than that, obviously there's less ability to control. The problem that we're seeing now in the trending that's happened over the last 10 years is 3% decrease every year in water consumption because of low flow fixtures, people not watering the grass anymore, and all the things they're doing with rain barrels and so on to cut their consumption. It has the impact of lowering it, but all the fixed costs of operating and maintaining the systems is still there. Operating all the plants in that region, that fixed cost is still there, the employment costs for it. So there's only one thing you can do in terms of controlling, and it's in your own consumption on that 50% portion. It's the best way to approach it right now.
Thanks, Ron. Councillor Kenny?
Thank you once again. So what you're saying, though, even though the consumer, myself or any other taxpayer, goes to the steps of reducing their water consumption by, like you said, the low flow toilets rebate program, which we still have going, in the end, it's actually the fixed costs that we have that maintain our system. The fixed cost that everybody pays really is what maintains the system, because the region, like you said, is still going to bill us that amount for that service. Is that correct? Okay. So just so, because I know when you get these things, the first thing you do is you get calls from your constituents that say, how could you approve that? Because, but I need to know that, to tell them that it's really the fixed cost of our system that we're maintaining in order to pay our bill to the region. And so, okay, that's good. And so the averaging component now, because we had that averaging done in 2011, will that now happen again in 2014? And then we'll know if we're ahead of the game or if we owe them, like we underpaid. Is that right? Averaging.
Mr. Sinez.
To Deputy Mayor, it's averaged every year.
Okay.
So every year they're going to have the reconciliation, but it's always 1 year behind.
Okay.
So we just received the 2012 reconciliation, which will show up on our, the region will then bill us or pay us back in 2014. So the 2013 budget that we have today incorporates from the region the $380,000 that we owe them back from 2011. But council put aside the dollars that we had in the surplus of that year in order to pay for that. Therefore, it's not affecting the 2013 budget.
Thanks.
You're good?
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Call the question? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Bill.
Move to leave to allow anyone to speak.
All in favor? Sorry? Seconder, sorry. Councillor Demeray. All in favor? That'll be carried. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on water, wastewater rates? Come on up.
Sorry, I actually didn't get the newspaper, otherwise I would. My mom called today,
Just push the, and name and address for the clerk.
Sure, my name is Tara Grable. I live at 66 Adelaide Street here in Port Colborne. I'm not going to get into my own issues with wastewater and sewer. What I just had a quick question was to Ron Hansen or Peter Sinez, is related to when you were talking about the money that's set aside here, and especially the surplus being reinvested for the fixed cost to offset that, because we know that that storm is coming our way. Where in all of this money is the money set aside for infrastructure reinvestment? So the actual, because I looked at the list and it looks like $272,272.5 is actually spent on repairs maintenance. But where is it for? Because we know a lot of the pipe, certainly in my neighborhood, our neighbors know that the pipe is failing. It's probably been there since the 20s, maybe 30s. So where is the money set aside for those big ticket items like they did on Catherine Street a couple of years ago?
Mr. Sinez.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. It is in the fixed charge, the capital component. if you'll see, we have about $600,000 that we do set aside. In 2013, we're actually going to be there's going to be Clalley Street is being done, and there's about I believe about $500,000 or $600,000 worth of water main works that are scheduled for 2013, and Mr. Hanson will be able to, I think, let you know as to which projects are on the books. Basically, that any of our costs for new water mains is in that fixed service charge that is billed, and you see on your water bill. That includes your any capital new capital. It includes the fixed costs that we pay for the region to the region, which is about on this about $1 million, and it pays for any of our long-term debt that we've borrowed money in order to put new water mains in place.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. That's helpful. And the only reason I asked that is because when they pulled the regional water main out in 2009, I guess, on Catherine Street, there were a whole lot of horrified people in our neighborhood. When it came out, it was completely cracked water. It was absolutely a disaster when they pulled it out. So it was pretty disgusting. And so people were like, okay, it's great that the water is treated at the plant, but then by the time it gets through those pipes, if people actually knew what was coming into their house. And I know these are never the items, they're not fabulous things where there's a ribbon cutting when you get, everybody gets a photo op. They're never that. But at the end of the day, it's the health and safety of the community. And people in my neighborhood know that the pipes are not good. I have issues in front of mine where I know there's issues with the pipe because Catherine Street is now sinking. It's actually collapsing next to my property. So there's obviously a water problem, but I think for a lot of my neighbors, they were like, sometimes we turn the tap, there's brown water coming out of it, even after they have been back onto the brand new. So that was just my question. It's more of a comment that I think investing in infrastructure is really important. It's great that we have all the luxury. We all have our wants. We love the skateboard park. Things are great for the community. But if we don't do the health and safety bureau basics, and I think people are starting to notice that, they are in my neighborhood because everybody keeps complaining to me about those basic things that just don't seem to happen as quickly as we'd like. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Tara. Mr. Hanson, you want to make a comment to that?
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. Just to clarify a point that Tara made there. Some of the pipes are in very poor condition from the 20s and 30s. But just to be clear, we can assure everyone that the water is extensively tested on a daily basis. The water is very clean, very pure, and in very good condition. So even though the infrastructure is failing in some areas, the water is rigorously tested and is in very good condition. So just want to be clear on that. Okay. The water system is very safe.
Thanks, Ron.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, also we'd like to note and make sure for public inspection, there is a capital plan that Council adopted 2 years ago. It is a plan required under the law that sets out all of the pipes and all the work that you're going to be doing over the years. The system in Port Colborne, based on that plan, is approved by the province. The system isn't, it's a good system. This council has been, I'm going to say, vigorously working at improving it. And although there's the odd problem, it's not near the horror stories that we've heard in other places. It's actually in pretty good shape, and we'll continue to improve with these kinds of budgets managed properly.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. Councilor Butters?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Tara did bring up one point. She just said about when people in her neighborhood, when brown water comes out of their tap. If that's to happen anywhere in the city, what should that individual do? Just as a, who should they call? Who should they speak to? Because I think that's a pretty important thing of, in terms of health and safety issue.
Thank you, Councilor Butters. Mr. Hanson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. First thing they should do is call our Works Department, 835-5079, and we'd be happy to send one of our water operators, one of our water technicians out, do a quick sample, and then try to determine. There's various reasons. Could be a break in a service line. It could be a hot water tank. There's various reasons you can get discolored water. Sometimes hydrant flushing in the area will cause the cast iron mains to score and then discolor the water on a temporary basis. So feel free to give us a call, and be happy to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks, Ron. Councilor Bodnar.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Peter, I guess, or just because Tara mentioned something that other infrastructure projects we've done, like the skateboard park. could that money have been used in the sewer and water?
You, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bonner, no, it's a separate fund.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner?
So just to be clear then, only money provided by the users of water and sewer is then spent again in that, like general funds or things we do, just can't, regular taxpayer dollars, I guess I'm saying, just don't go to fix sewer and water. It's from the users of the sewer and water?
Mr. Sinnes?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bodner, correct. The water fund is legislated that it has to be self-sustainable, along with the wastewater, and so the water is under new legislation. So any of the funds that we raise through the rates for water have to be spent in water, same as wastewater. And then the general fund is totally separate with a general tax levy.
Thanks, Peter. Any other questions? I just got, I guess, one question to Ron. So, we're talking about water. What are the capital projects on tap for this, I guess, construction season? I had to take advantage of it.
Late last year, earlier this year, we awarded a tender for some water main replacement projects. Driving around town, you might notice that we recently did some work on Elm Street, just north of Maine, and currently Snyder Street is under reconstruction replacement. Snyder Street was a real problem area for us. We had a large number of breaks there, so that's getting replaced. The big project for this year is Cloud Street West. Our portion of that project is about $1.4 million. We're going to replace all the water main infrastructure between King Street and Oakwood Street, just prior to the region replacing the road section, full urban section, and four-lane curb and gutter and two-lane roadways. So those are the main projects for this year.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ron. Councillor Bodner?
Through you to Ron, just on that point. Now we're doing Cloudley Street just because it's being torn up, right? I mean, it isn't necessarily that it might be worse than another area, but we're taking advantage of the fact that it's being torn up by the region, and we're doing the work while it's torn up, so we don't have to tear up the new pavement to do that in the future.
Mr. Hanson?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. That's correct, Councillor Bodner. It wasn't the first priority. It's a 1940s, 50s vintage cast iron water main. So we're taking the opportunity with the reconstruction of Cloudley Street to replace that main and get that done. There are some higher priority ones, but that jumps to the head of the line because of the work that's being done.
Okay. You good? Any other questions? Anybody else from the gallery that would like to speak to this? Seeing none? Calling the question? All in favor? That'll be carried. Thanks, guys. Moving on to item number 11, Councillor Butters.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. That the resolution received from the City of Welland regarding moving of maternal and child care services and inpatient pediatric services from the Welland Hospital site and the Greater Niagara General Hospital to the new St. Catharines Hospital site be referred to the South Niagara Healthcare Corporation.
And the seconder for that? Councillor Desmarais?
Deputy Mayor.
Sorry. Councillor Kenny?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think I'm going to declare indirect pecuniary interest as I'm still a casual employee of the NHS. Thanks.
Okay. Questions or comments? Councillor Butters?
Thank you. Yeah, I had the opportunity to go with one of my fellow councillors to the meeting at the Welland Arena, and this resolution kind of comes out of that meeting, I would say, where the Mayor of Welland and Mayor Niagara Falls called this meeting together and gave a pretty good presentation and a pretty good argument why maternity and peds should stay at those two hospitals. It was a very well attended meeting. There was representation from 5 municipalities, which included, of course, Welland, Niagara Falls. There was Port Colborne, Waynfleet, and Fort Erie people there. Some of the interesting information that came out of that meeting was that in terms of the babies that are being, you know, babies being born right now, majority of them are coming from South Niagara. The numbers in St. Catharines, those numbers are down, and South Niagara numbers going up. So, and have been higher for a long, I guess, a fairly substantial amount of time. So to keep maternity services in Welland Hospital and GNGH for that matter seemed to make some kind of sense to me. I kind of got the drift from the people that were at that meeting and subsequently to that meeting that were, when it was covered in the newspaper, my kind of feedback from the people I know is that they think that there should be peds and maternity stay at, certainly at the Welland Hospital site. The people from Port Colborne that I've talked to anyway, that's an important thing to them. The service at GNGH I don't think is as much of an effective Port Colborne residents, but it certainly is for Fort Erie folks, because that's the closest place for them to go for that service. So I don't believe that I need the South Niagara Healthcare Corp to advise me on this. I think that from going to that particular meeting as well as talking to individuals since then, that I know how I feel about that. And I think that there should be maternity and peds kept at the Welland site. And I think that the tripartite committee should be reinstituted, which included all of our mayors. I don't see anything particularly disturbing about the resolution coming forward, and I think we should be supporting it. So that's what I would be requesting, is that we support that resolution as opposed to sending it to the Corp.
Thank you, Councilor Butters. Councilor Bodnar?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, Councilor Butters makes some good points about she's certainly willing to and ready to vote on this. I guess the only caution I would throw out there is that, you know, we have these committees, the South Niagara Healthcare Corp, you know, and we have traditionally referred items like this to that committee for response, and I would, I think I would be more comfortable in doing that. And Councilor Butters did make a good point that we have recently referred something to that corporation and have not heard back. Can I ask when the next meeting of that? Does anybody know? Do we have something scheduled? So I haven't seen anything. And do they meet regularly, once a month, or?
No, they don't meet.
That's a good question. Staff? Mr. Seo?
We'll follow up. There was something referred, and I know they were working on it. I'm not sure the status of it. The next meeting, no, I'm not going to shoot from the hip. We'll follow up on the next meeting. They do meet regularly. And our Joanne Faircholi is the executive director.
Okay. Councilor Butters, you good? Councilor Butters? Councilor Demery? Sorry, Councilor Demery.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I would agree with Councilor Butters in one respect for certain. I get a lot of comments and questions concerning what we're doing about healthcare and about the state of the hospitals right now. People do not want to see pediatrics and maternity moved to the north at all. They didn't want to see Port Colborne lose it, but they certainly are not going to stand by idly and see Welland lose it. They want us to take action, and I think for those watching tonight, it would be good if someone could give us an explanation as to why we as a council need to refer this to the court.
Good question. Mr. Seo? Not sure.
Worship, matters of health care in all of this, the fact is it has been, matters of this have been sent to that healthcare corporation. It was created by the city. It is a corporation of doctors and practitioners, very knowledgeable people, and they have been providing some good advice that we've been using in letter writing and working with the ministers. Everything that comes out of the mayor's office after the meetings have been, I'm going to say, more technical but it's the language that the Minister of Health understands, and Lynn and the NHS. We've sent it there just because we're looking for that specialized and technical advice in respect of the matters coming before council. It's up to council, but the recommendation that I had written for this was specifically to follow along with what we have been doing, rather than specifically making a change in process to ensure that this council has the best information that it can possibly get in respect of healthcare matters.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. Councillor Butters, I'll go to Councillor Doucette first because he didn't spoke first yet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
One of the concerns I have with this is that I don't disagree with what everyone said. I don't like the fact it's moving. I don't think it's a good idea. But my other concern is, are we just spinning our wheels? Because every time you hear Mr. Smith talk, Dr. Smith talk, he says it's a done deal. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter what anyone does. So I hate blowing in the wind, you know what I mean? And I'm wondering if that isn't what this is. It's spitting in the wind and it's going to come back and just slap us and nothing's going to get done. Does that mean we ignore it? I don't know if we should or not, but at the same time, how much reality of what I'm saying is really going on? Is it going to be worth doing? And maybe that's where the experts can tell us they may have a better idea about whether it's worth doing or not. Okay, and maybe that's where the health corp should come in, hopefully to give us advice as soon as possible, but then move on from there. Because that's my concern I'm tired of spinning my wheels on something that we're wasting time on, and we should be doing other things to help the health here in Port Colborne.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Butters.
Thank you. Maybe it would help just to read the resolution, if that would be okay, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Go ahead.
This has come from the Welland City Council, February 5th, 2013. This is the motion that they passed. That the Council of the City of Welland strongly urges the Niagara Hospital System, NHS, to refrain from making any decision with respect to moving maternal and child care services and inpatient pediatrics from the Welland Hospital site and Greater Niagara General Hospital, GNGH site, until the new St. Catharines Hospital site has been in full operation for 6 months, and further, the Welland City Council urges Dr. Kevin Smith and the Local Health Integration Network, the LIN, to permit the new NHS Board of Directors, once appointed, to be given an opportunity to review and provide input on the decision to move the aforementioned services from the Welland Hospital site and GNGH site to the new St. Catharines Hospital site, and further, that the Welland City Council requests that the tripartite review committee established by the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, involving the LIN, the NHS, and the region, reconvenes as soon as possible in order to complete the review it was tasked to do. And further, that the Welland City Council directs that this motion be forwarded to all Niagara regional municipalities seeking their support for this motion at their very earliest opportunity, and so inform Dr. Smith, the LIN, Minister Matthews, Premier-elect Kathleen Wynne, and MPPs Tim Hudak and Andrea Horvath of such support. So, if this is like a waste of time, and maybe, as Councillor Doucette says, maybe it is, but to my thinking, to stay silent is just not acceptable. That's not an acceptable position for me to take. When you stay silent, you get what you deserve. If you speak up and you still get screwed over, which is entirely possible, at least you are still trying to fight for some kind of change. You're trying to fight for the citizens of your community. And then it's on somebody else's head. But to sit back and do nothing, to me, is just, it's not an option. And I'm not going to accept that as an option for myself. The others that need to make up their own mind, I have the greatest respect for the healthcare corp. It's not about whether they do a good job or give us good advice or don't give us good advice. I just don't require it in this instance. I know myself that for a pediatrics and a maternity ward to still be at the Welland Hospital is a good thing for the citizens of Port Colborne. That's what I know.
Thank you, Councillor Butters. Councillor Demery?
Thank you again, Deputy Mayor. Just to make this work for all of us, I would hope that this might work. That we be able to approve this today, to approve the motion coming from the City of Welland, and agree that we should send it along to the Healthcare Corp for further support or further information. Because I'm in the same position as Councillor Butters. I don't need anyone to tell me that this is the right thing to do. I have residents telling me every day that this is what they want, and people need to be heard. So that's how I'd like to move forward on this.
Do you want to put that forward as an amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. The amendment would be to support it?
To support this
now and
as it
still
stands today, and send it along to the Healthcare Corp for
comment?
their information and action.
Okay. Councillor Butters is okay with friendly amendment? Seconder for that? Yeah. Seconder for that? Councillor Danch? Questions or comments to the amendment? All in favor? That carries. You conflict, right? There. Back to the original motion as amended. All in favor? That'll be carried unanimously with Councillor Kenny. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our items. Any notices of motion for next meeting? Seeing none, we'll look for a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting. Councillor Kenny, seconder. Councillor Butters, all in favor? That'll be carried. Now straight on the other. Straight to the. We'll call this meeting to order. This is the regular council meeting agenda, Monday, February 25th. Following committee of the whole meeting. Madam Clerk, is there any addendum items?
Thank you. None this evening.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Look for a motion for confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Steele. Second, Councillor Doucette. All in favor? That'll be carried. Disclosures of interest, other than myself. Councillor Kenny.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for item 11.
And I have a pecuniary interest in item number 2, and I also have a pecuniary interest in item A of the in-camera portion of our meeting. And also pecuniary interest in the conformatory or the bylaw that is attached to those. We'll look for adoption of the minutes for minutes of the 4th meeting special of council dated February the 4th, 2013, and the minutes of the 5th meeting regular of council dated February the 11th, 2013. Councillor Desmarais, Councillor Steele, all those in favor? That'll be carried. Items requiring separate discussion. Councillor Steele.
I'll bring forward items 2 and 11 for conflict.
That's all, just the 2? Thank you, Councillor Steele. Adoption of the items, or the rest of the items not requiring separate discussion. A motion for that. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Kenny, all in favor? That'll be carried. Items for separate discussion, and I will call Councillor Desmarais to conduct that portion of the meeting for item 2.
Okay, I'll just do that from here then. All right, for item 2, Councillor Kenny, did you move that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Steele did.
Thank you, Acting Mayor. I'll bring forward Department of Planning and Development Report number 2013-8, subject sale of West Side Arena.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Seconder? Councillor Doucette? All right. All right, all in favor? That'll be carried.
Thank you, Councillor Desmarais. Item number 11, Councillor Steele.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. City of Welland re the moving of maternal and child care services and inpatient pediatrics from Welland Hospital site at Greater Niagara General Hospital to the new St. Catharines Hospital site.
I'll look for a seconder on that as amended, right? Okay. Councillor Doucette, all in favor? That'll be carried. I see no proclamations tonight. I get off easy. We'll pass and block the 2 minutes of boards, commissions, and committees. There's only 2. The minutes of the Heritage Port Colborne meeting of January the 9th, 2013, and the minutes of the Port Colborne Transit Advisory Committee meeting of October 24th, 2012. It's been a while since they got their minutes. Mover and seconder on that, Councillor Bodner, Councillor Butters, all in favor? That'll be carried. Any notices of motion? Seeing none, I will call on Councillor Desmarais for the introduction, consideration, passage of bylaws. Oh, should we separate them, or do you want to do them all in one instead of?
5917.
And we've got a conflict for Councillor Kenny too. Oh, that's not a bylaw. Okay, sorry, just mine. Okay, so we'll just do 5917. Okay, for my conflict.
Bylaw number 5917, 2413, being a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement of purchase and of sale with 1844835 Ontario Inc. Re Parts 1 and 2 on Plan 59R-14802, 54 West Side Road, Port Colborne, West Side Arena, and associated lands. Movender, seconder. Councillor Steele, Councillor Doucette. All in favor? Carried.
That's it. And we'll do the rest of them in the block. Yeah, okay. We'll do it for you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. That the following bylaws be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 5918-2513, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Claire Randall Smith Pendlebury Cost Consultants regarding request for proposal 2012-21, cost consultant for the Port Colborne Operations Center. Bylaw 5919-2613, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with Chambers and Associates Surveying Limited regarding request for proposal 2012-23, land surveyor for the Port Colborne Operations Center. Bylaw 59202713, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a contract agreement with SPL Consultants Limited regarding request for proposal 2012-24, geotechnical consultants for the Port Colborne Operations Center. Bylaw 59212813, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3424697, a bylaw for the imposition and collection of sewer service rates and sewer rates. And finally, bylaw 59222913, Being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3151-2295, a bylaw to regulate the supply of water and to provide for the maintenance and management of water works and for the imposition and collection of water rates.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mover and seconder. Councillor Steele, Councillor Bodnar. All in favor? Opposed? Let it be carried. I got a conflict on confirmatory, don't I? No? No? But, yeah. Yeah. I don't have a conflict on that. Okay. And Madam, confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you. That the following bylaw be read 3 times and finally passed. Bylaw 5923-3013, being a bylaw to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the City of Port Colborne at its regular meeting of Council, February 25, 2013.
Mover and seconder. Councillor Danch. Councillor Demaray. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That'll be carried. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. Now entertain a motion to go into closed session. Before I do that, this is the first time we've got together since the opening of the Valet Center. Councillor Steele, if you'd like to get up, say a couple of words. If people that didn't have a chance to attend,
Yeah, speech is still here, because most of that's where it was. No, actually, it was a great day. I think I believe it was the import section of the Tribune that had the numbers wrong. They had like 500 people that were there. There were thousands there, not 500 people. That bugs me when reporters can't get the numbers right. However, great day. It was nonstop all day. I had to leave about 12:30 because I had to go to Port Elgin for our Bantam travel team that was up there in the quarterfinals for the OMHAs. But I talked to staff, I talked to other counselors after that, and they just said all day long people were coming through. I've been in that facility every day since when I got back on Sunday from Port Elgin. I was actually back there. And it's nonstop. People just coming by. We have people from out of town and our other hockey organizations within Niagara just coming down to see what our facility is like. They can't believe how nice it is. And the biggest thing they all say, there's nothing like it, where everything is under one roof. They just couldn't believe that. Guys from Niagara Falls were down. Actually, we had staff in from Niagara Falls. Their Gale Center came in. They loved it. Guys in from Pelham. If you notice, Pelham now is on the bandwagon to build a new rec center. They had people down from their minor hockey organization. They just thought it was fabulous that everything was under one roof. So, yeah, there's still people out there complaining about this and about that, but you're going to get that. But on the whole, it's just positive, positive, positive. And people are walking on the track, using the gymnasium, the pool. The pool was packed on the weekend. They had public swimming. There wasn't an inch of water available. I don't know how they swam, but it's great. And, you know, just all kinds of kids, which is the biggest thing. Seniors out there walking, using the fitness facility, the pool area. I was in during the week, and there was a ladies' aqua fit class going on. It was great, and tons of people just standing around watching. Like, that's what's really neat. People going there having a coffee or a tea or whatever, and just sitting there. Kids were there having lunch from the school. Just stopped by the one day, and it's great. The ice is fantastic. The facilities are great. I know our guys are working very hard to keep up with keeping it clean. It is quite a bit bigger than our last facility, or the 3 separate facilities, but they're doing a banner job there. And again, we'll be tweaking things as we go along as a council and with staff. So, but hats off to everybody that was involved, from our volunteers to the kids from all the sporting organizations, to the delegations that came and spoke that day, especially you as council, our staff and newspapers for giving us good reports. But it was a fabulous day for Port Colborne. They were parked literally from Highway 3 to Clally Street East, all the way up the street. It was great. And then the Junior B game, which was the first big game in the facility, sold out. Approximately 1,700 people there, so I guess was the numbers they had. Literally sold out. There wasn't a spot in the place, which is good to see for Port Colborne. So my hat's off. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steele. Mr. CEO?
Just one brief note, if I may, Mr. Acting Mayor, Deputy Mayor, we've had a few problems with alcohol and with smoking. And for the public record, we will be pursuing charges. We will be pursuing trespass and no trespass orders for anybody that's smoking or drinking or using any of our beverages within that building. There is zero tolerance. Council approved it at the last meeting. We are going to pursue it. Mr. Hakeem and staff are meeting later on this week, and I want to make absolutely sure that everybody is very, very clear and understands. Somebody's going to call and complain to members of council because we're issuing no trespass order. Your direction here is no violation, and we are going to pursue that vigorously.
Thank you, Mr. Sale. And and I was just corrected by the clerk before we ask for a motion to go in camera. I have to read the items that we're discussing in camera. So that's not bad after we get to the end of the meeting. That's the only mistake that I made. The motion to go into closed session that council do now proceed in camera in order to address the following matters. A, Confidential Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report number 2013-07 concerning the potential sale of city-owned land pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And B, Confidential Engineering and Operations Department Engineering Division Report number 2013-08 concerning potential litigation in respect of city fuel systems pursuant to the Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239, subsection 2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality of local board. Mover and seconder. Councillor Bodnar, Councillor Desmarais, all in favor? Thank you. And before we go, opposed? You want to stay here? Our next, just so that everybody knows, our next committee of the whole and council meetings tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. here in council chambers. We have a special committee of the whole meeting with regards to the budget. The next committee of the whole council meeting will be 5:30? Sorry, it says 6:30 on this. 5:30 that will be. Yeah, if you come at 6:30, you might miss it.
Actually, meals at 4:45.
Okay. And then Monday, March 11th, 2013, we're back to Committee of the Whole and Council at 6:30, and Monday, March 25th, 2013, Committee of the Whole and Council at 6:30 p.m. here in Council Chambers. That'll get us to the end of March. And like Councilor Steele said, there were 1,700 people at that Junior B game. They start playoffs this Friday at home. Be nice to fill the place again for the boys that are from Port Colborne. So come on out, support them. That's at 7:30 p.m. New Valley Health and Wellness Center. And we're adjourned.